Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we're going to review In the Mood for Love. But before that, we're also going to talk about Jojo Rabbit and Waves.
And Criterion new releases for April 2020.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Join us.
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who was originally cast as Maggie Cheung's husband and is bitter that he got cut out of In the Mood for Love. Mike, how you doing today?
Oh, well, just ruminating over my failed acting career, I guess.
I hear you did a really great job. You just got cut out of the movie, so...
Yeah, it's just pacing, you know.
Yeah, it's a bummer, really.
It happens.
I say hashtag release the one car Y cut with Mike in it. So, also with us is a man who is about to get married, so he's always in the mood for love. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you so much. I hope that my fiance hears that.
Yeah.
Glowing thoughts about me.
Yeah. I hope so too.
I'm getting us out of this. If this is your first time listening, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is a Criterion Collection focused episode that we do every other week, where we review a film from the Criterion Collection that is picked by the listeners. Before we get into the main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March, where we talk about recent news and things we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie or you have no interest in it, I don't know why you're here, but you can still listen anyway. Then we will move into our Casually Criterion review for In the Mood for Love, Spy Number 147.
And if you want to vote in the polls to help choose our next Criterion film, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. If you want to send in questions or topics about the movies we're watching each week for us to discuss, you can send those to those social media accounts. You can also email them to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you like the show and you haven't done so already, go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the show. It also makes us feel good when we see them.
That's true. And you really can't put a monetary value on that. So,
yeah, I base my happiness just on our reviews. So please send in some good ones.
So it's been kind of a blue period for him. you could really use this. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is depressing. So what do you guys say we get into News on the March?
Let's go, please.
News on the March!
All right, now that we're away from Chris's cringy...
Depression?
What?
Depression? Sadness?
Yeah. His cringy depression. What do you guys say we talk about the new Criterion releases for April 2020?
Sure.
Awesome. So, Justin, what do we have on the horizon?
Well, starting on April 7th, we have Army of Shadows from Jean-Pierre Melville, which is a re-release. It was out of print for a while, so it's finally coming back.
Yeah.
We have April 14th, we have Destry Rides Again from George Marshall. April 21st, we have The Cremator from Uri Hertz. Doing my best to pronounce that. It's Czechoslovakian. So, yeah. And then on April 28th, we have two films. Me and You and Everyone We Know from Miranda July and The Grand Budapest Hotel from Wes Anderson.
Yeah, so I've seen Army of Shadows and Grand Budapest.
As have I.
Did you guys not watch Me and You and Everyone We Know?
No.
In our Blockbuster
I remember
days?
the cover.
Yeah, I thought about it probably about 275 times and just never did, you know?
Yeah, this is a movie I really, really like. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I remember it very fondly.
Yeah,
Cool.
I've always heard really good things about it, and it's been on a list forever, and this is, you know, a little kick in the pants that I should watch it sooner than later.
Yeah. Now I wished I would have. But
sure.
I did at one point own Army of Shadows on DVD.
Yeah.
And I watched that, and I love it. So
is that point gone?
Oh, yes. That point in time is long past. And I no longer even know where the DVD is. I think I let someone borrow it and never saw it again.
Oh, wow.
No, but I'm excited to watch it again on Blu-ray. So that's definitely one I'm going to buy because I've missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a DVD of it. Not yours, my own, I promise.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe. But I've had the DVD, and I always regretted not upgrading to the Blu-ray when it was available because the Blu-ray was in print at some point, and then it went out of print. So it's kind of been one of those, often talked about out of print movies that are expensive now, but it won't be for long.
Well, it'll be normal Criterion expensive, but not like out of print Criterion expensive.
Right. These other ones, Destry Rides Again. That's a film that I've heard of. Of course, it has Jimmy Stewart and Marlene Dietrich in it. Mm-hmm. And it's one that I've heard of, but I don't know that I've ever heard about it talked with extremely high acclaim like other classic films. So it's one that hasn't made its way up my list before.
Yeah, I'm always down to find a new Jimmy Stewart gem.
His movies are some of my favorite classic movies. So, and then I know nothing about the Cremator, the Czechoslovakian film.
Me neither. I'm ashamed to say I don't. But I have heard of a little movie called Grand Budapest Hotel. Mm-hmm. Which I am excited is finally being released on Criterion because this is probably my second or third favorite Wes Anderson movie.
I think I agree. I've only seen it the one time. Like, I haven't ever watched it again since theaters, even though I own like the regular Blu-ray, and I've meant to time and time again.
I liked it better the second time.
I like all of his movies better the second time, even the ones I don't like. I like them better the second time than I do the first time.
They can only go up.
Yeah. I just find more to appreciate,
But yeah, I'm excited to watch this one again. I don't think I've seen it since the very, very first days of Blu-ray. It always felt like I should hold off on purchasing it because I always figured this day would be coming.
Yeah, it's smart. I think I have it on Blu-ray because I got it. It was like a free one and like a buy two get one free somewhere.
Yeah, I think I borrowed one or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, but I do like it, and this one has been talked about forever. Like if you're in any of the Criterion Facebook groups, and there's sometimes polls of like what's gonna be announced this month. I think I feel like 8 to 10 months now, Grand Budapest is like it's always in the top like 3 or 4 of people expecting it to be announced.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So this week I caught up with a couple of movies that you guys have long seen, but I had to seek out because they did not come anywhere near me in theaters. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to be part of the conversation too. And the first one of those movies that I watched was Waves.
Nice.
Which is the film by Trey Edward Schultz that was released a few months back. I think like back in October or something.
That sounds about right. That sounds about when Chris and I watched it.
Yeah. So it had been long gone. There was, I think, pretty much nowhere around playing this thing. Like nowhere in Texas anyway. And I was actually on my way through Fort Worth on my way to a wedding last weekend. And I got on the Flickster app and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try one more time to look and see if there's anything good within driving distance while I'm here, And lo and behold, a little indie theater had opened up called the Grand Space
Budapest.
Barry. No, not Grand Budapest. Grand Barry Theater.
Interesting.
It's a little like one screen indie theater on the back of some like business like in downtown, but they play indie movies. Currently they were playing Waves, and then at night they were playing Uncut Gems. Mm-hmm. So yeah, anyway, I went to the early screening to Waves, and it was pretty fun. It was nice to support a little indie theater. So if you're in Fort Worth, Texas, or anywhere within driving distance of Fort Worth, go visit that theater. It's pretty cool.
Noted.
And it's new.
I'm not near it, but I'm near enough Fort Worth quite often.
Yeah. So just keep it in your back pocket on your radar or something. But anyway, Waves. I remember you guys liked this movie quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's high up there for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we're going to get too far into spoilers into this, but if you don't want to know anything at all about Waves, use your show notes to skip ahead because we may be talking about like very vague plot stuff. So I didn't know anything about this movie going in at all. And I would say for a good hour into this movie, I didn't necessarily dislike it, but I did not see what the acclaim was about.
Right.
And I was very much like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this movie's trying to say. It's very energetic and it's very stylistic and everything, but I don't know where it's going, Very different from Trey Edward Schultz's previous movie, It Comes at Night, tone-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the movie, I think, about halfway through, really takes a turn. And I was thinking for a brief minute that I did not like this movie at all. There comes and anyone who's seen the movie will probably know exactly what that moment is, right?
I do.
Yeah. But there was a moment where I was just like, this is just too much. Like, I don't know what they're saying with this. I don't know what's going on. Why are you making me watch this? This is sad. But then I think the last hour of this movie really takes a turn and becomes something else entirely. And I think it's actually quite good.
That's almost exactly my feelings while watching the movie. There was a long period where I was like, I'm not sure if what I'm watching is actually good.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are things about it that I'm just like, I don't get where we're going and I don't quite understand
what's being
the
said.
Tone. Yeah. And it's like, it just wasn't quite connecting with me. Some of it maybe seemed a little bit too melodramatic for me to really care about at times.
Yeah. Like an after school special kind of.
Yes.
I think the moment that you're talking about too, that's the after school special where I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. Like it took a turn real suddenly, and I was like, wait a minute, what have I been watching? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, what is this?
I did like the first half. I thought,
it was good, but then like it starts to speed up in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like it starts out a certain way and it ends a certain way, and a certain speed and pacing and a tone. But like in the middle, right when it starts to transition into the second half, there's a good maybe 15 minutes where things just ramp up real quick and real hard, and it just becomes like as a guy who knew nothing about what this movie was or what it was about or anything, like there came a certain point where like this movie could go any direction at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The movie just kind of had me, and it was just unfolding. And for a little bit there, I was kind of mistrusting of it, but I think it's worth it in the end, and it actually becomes one of the more profound movies that I've seen. And I'm still kind of unpacking it, and I'm so glad we haven't done our best of the movies of the year so far, because I'm not saying it will be on my top 10, but I'm not saying it won't either at this point. And I'm glad I have some days to think about it still.
It's in the conversation.
Yeah.
It's certainly it made me rethink things.
Yeah. I feel the same way about it. I mean, granted, I saw it early on, so I've had a while to process it, but it definitely, I knew after seeing it, like once it ended, I was like, this will likely be in the conversation, barring, a lot of movies coming out that are better than this, which is a tall order.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm really grateful that I went out of my way to seek this movie out. I definitely recommend that if you can do it, just get on Flickster and expand your miles from your current location a little bit and see if you can find it.
Yeah, totally worth it. And I think it's really beautifully shot too. Like the cinematography in it. It's very raw, very natural.
Very vibrant, very alive.
Yeah.
It's two different ways that they're shooting this movie. There's really the first half and the second half, and they're almost very different, both in story and in the way it looks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not to mention, this movie is saying a lot. Like, I've been unpacking a lot of what this movie has been, or at least what I imagine this movie to be saying, and a lot of it has been resonating with me as well. And I even said kind of in our show Slack that it reminded me similarly in theme of another movie that I saw that I would kind of like to transition to now, if you guys are done talking about waves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm good.
So I mentioned I saw 2 movies. The other movie I saw was Jojo Rabbit.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the movie I think was kind of vaguely similar in theme to Waves. In a vague sense. But Jojo Rabbit is a movie that has recently been nominated for Best Picture. And, we are doing our best movies of 2019 next week. And I had pretty much just decided not to bother seeing this movie. I don't hear much people talking about this movie. It's not really in the conversation, so I need not bother. Well, then the Oscar nominees came out.
Those damn Oscar nominees every time.
I know. Always highlighting these movies that I otherwise would not have paid attention to. But yeah, no, this movie turned out to be pretty good. There was a few moments in there where I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if the humor is landing with me. But overall, I found the movie to be really sweet. And like you guys told me the other day, it has heart.
And it's likable because of its heart, I think, because the humor's not always landing for me either.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, I think Taika Waititi has a good style of humor to where he throws a lot of jokes out there, and not all of them land for me. Whenever something doesn't land, he doesn't really focus on it for too long. He's moving on to other jokes, Right. He keeps his movies kind of tight and breezy in that department. So I found Jojo Rabbit to, even whenever the humor wasn't landing for me, I found it to be pretty watchable. And certainly not annoying at any point. Yeah.
And I really want to shout out Scarlett Johansson. She was great in Marriage Story, but she's really great in this. And I think without a performance like of hers to anchor this film, like she is the heart of the film, I think, in many ways, and kind of really anchors this film and gives it more poignancy as opposed to just the goofy Sam, what's his name? Nazi guy.
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell. Yeah, goofy Nazi guy.
Yeah, but no, Sam Rockwell's good too. I actually liked his character quite a bit. There's a little bit of nuance there. I don't know. He's kind of I don't want to give too much away, I guess, here in non-spoilers, but
yeah,
I like him, and I like Alfie Allen as well, and the whole implication with their thing.
I do remember that. It's good. I like the relationship forged between the main kid and the main girl in it.
Yeah,
whose names,
by the
I
way,
can't remember.
Thomasin McKenzie.
Yes,
wasn't she in Leave No Trace?
She was.
Yeah, she's really good.
So this is 2 great performances for her. So when she's in something else, I'm going to be intrigued.
She's going to be in it's Last Night in Soho, I believe.
Oh,
okay, that's one I'm already intrigued by.
Yeah.
So double it up.
Yeah, cool. And then obviously the little boy who played Jojo, whose name escapes me right now.
He's nominated, isn't he?
No.
Is he?
No, he's not. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused with Roman Griffin Davis is his name, by the way.
Roman. Roman.
Yeah,
okay.
But I'm getting
anyway,
confused.
he was
I
really
saw
good.
some it might have been like regular awards from like another podcast or something, and they had like a young actor award, and he was in that.
Yeah, I think deservingly so, because I think he was really, really watchable.
Yeah, and he's portraying a lot of complex emotion, right?
Yeah, he really is.
For a kid of his age. And it's emotions that you have when you're a kid of that age, of like, when the world as you know it comes into question. Mm-hmm. Like that happens to kids around that age and stuff, but like he portrays it really naturally and really well. It's really good.
Yeah. And there's one scene in particular, he has to do a lot of heavy lifting to sell some really heavy emotion in the movie. It's kind of the heart of the movie, where if this scene doesn't work, the last act of the movie doesn't work. And I think he does it.
He does.
I think Taika Waititi, I think he works best in these movies with kids in them, where they, like Hunt for the Wilder People, I think, is my favorite Taika Waititi directed film. And this reminded me most of that. So I think he works well within like the family movie with heart genre kind of thing.
Yeah. And when I saw this film, there was a grandma who took like 3 kids that are probably JoJo's age to see this movie. Which I place him at around like 8.
Yeah, probably.
Is that accurate? Maybe.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
You say family movie, but I was like, is this movie appropriate for these 8-year-old like boys and girls?
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe like teenagers and up.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious about that because I've been thinking about that ever since I saw the movie.
Well, I don't think it's not appropriate. I just think it might be boring to them. Like, I don't know if it would actually be funny or if they.
Yeah, I guess I also didn't. Yeah, I didn't know at the time where the movie was going to go. But you're probably right. There's nothing like horribly inappropriate or violent, or gory or something that I can recall that would be inappropriate. But yeah, like is this movie going to work for them? Probably not.
It's got funny Hitler in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know if that Hitler was funny enough to bring the 8-year-olds to the table.
We're not 8, so we can watch it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but anyway, I liked it. It's good. I don't know if I would put it in the best picture race exactly, but hey, I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, for me, no, too. But it's not the only one in that category that I would take out either. Yeah. So, and it might be ahead of some of the things I would take out first.
Yeah, I say I don't begrudge it for being there more than some other ones. So
yeah, totally.
It's no Green Book, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, well, I think that's all I've got on both of those movies. What do you guys say we move on into our official Casually Criterion main event?
Let's move into the main event.
Let's go. I'm in the mood for it.
Yeah, in the mood for the main event.
Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, they're usually films that have been out for a while and are, no longer considered new films, I guess, at the very least. So we don't do a spoiler-free section like we do on our other episodes about more current films. So we're going to go straight into talking about this movie, spoilers and all. So if you haven't seen In the Mood for Love, go see In the Mood for Love, and then do yourself another favor and come back and finish listening to this podcast.
Yeah. Then do yourself another favor and then download another podcast app and subscribe to our show twice so you can get twice the enjoyment out of it.
That's true.
In the Mood for Love was directed by Wong Kar-wai, starring Maggie Cheung and Tony Leung. The IMDb synopsis says, two neighbors, a woman and a man, form a strong bond after both suspect extramarital activities of their spouses. However, they agree to keep their bond platonic so as not to commit similar wrongs. So who wants to get us started on their overall thoughts for In the Mood for Love? I vote Chris.
I also vote Chris because I believe this was Chris's choice in our blind spots criterion category. So this is Chris's first time to have seen this. Am I right?
He is.
Yeah. He was awesome. In the mood for Wong Kar-wai.
Actually, the opposite's quite true. Well, as far as the Wong Kar-wai goes, I have not been a fan for a while, and I've had this argument with people about Wong Kar-wai. I've seen like 4 or 5 of his movies. In fact, twice there's a re-release of Ashes of Time that was playing at the Landmark Theater, in downtown Dallas, the Inwood Theater, I think actually it was. But I had to convince my friend to go, and then this girl, and I was like, this is going to be a great movie, guys. We all went, and it was not great. Nobody liked it. Nobody enjoyed it. It was full of that slow motion thing that he does all the time. The little
that choppy slow-mo.
The choppy, like it looks like frames have been removed. It was Ashes of Time. I'd also seen Blueberry Nights that also has that issue.
My Blueberry Nights,
yes. And I was not a fan of that. And then once again, I went and saw The Grandmaster. Once again, I failed to be impressed or get involved in the story. It felt really slow to me, like all 3 of the movies, and not like it was going anywhere. So there's a Wong Kar-wai box set coming out this year. I personally haven't seen what was so great about Wong Kar-wai, so that's why I chose this movie, because I wanted to pick his best movie and see how I liked it. And I loved it. I really thought this was great. For one, it doesn't have the choppy slow motion in it as much. It's enough to be able to handle. But I thought this movie was beautiful. The cinematography in this is just full of amazing shots. What I really liked was that this isn't particularly about story as it is about the emotion that these characters are going through, or the mood, if you will, that they're going through. And I find that really interesting. I really found they just left out the spouses in another movie less good than this one. There would have been, that would have been a major part of this film. But I like how it just focused on our 2 heroes and their unrequited love for each other. And that mood, I was really fascinated with it. I'm excited to watch it again because I think there's more layers to be mined from this film. And yeah, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Justin, what did you think?
Well, this is my second time to watch this movie. I have seen some Wong Kar-wai movies that I was not a fan of, but I've always been a fan of this one since the first time watching it. And this is maybe the first movie of his that I watched, maybe the second. The first might have been My Blueberry Nights, but this is the first one of like his acclaimed work that I've seen. But this being my second viewing, I think as they say, the good movies get better when you rewatch them. And I enjoyed it more this time than I did the first time I watched it. That may be, me being 10 or 12 years older than I was from the time that I first watched it. Mm-hmm. But like you said, Chris, I think it's maybe one of the best looking Criterion movies that we've watched thus far, and maybe one of the best that I've seen in the collection in general. I'm really in love with like the way that this movie looks, all of the shots, the depth that's achieved in each frame, and the movement and composition just across the board. It's like firing on all cylinders to me, cinematography wise. I think the performances are really, really good, really, really subtle. There's not a ton of exposition, a ton of dialogue carrying this film. The actors are, doing a lot with their expressions and their body language. And that I enjoy, dissecting the movie that way and having to really pay attention as opposed to just hear what they're having to say and having their thoughts and emotions come across that way. So I find the movie really interesting on that level. I think that there's something about the movie, and I don't know what it is, that keeps me from getting to a place where I'm just really, really in love with it. Where I'm, gonna walk out of here giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think the first time that I watched it, I was feeling like 4 out of 5 stars. This time I bumped it up a little bit to 4.5. I think I appreciated the cinematography and some of the editing techniques and the way the movie kind of feels fractured, like memories, and the way that he gets that across via editing, via revisiting some of the same locations and the same shots over and over again, but in different moments of their relationship. A lot of that was really just entrancing to me this time, but it does kind of fall short on some level for me, that where I don't fully connect with it and walk away thinking I love this movie completely and totally. And I don't know what that is yet. So maybe we can talk about it and figure it out. But for now, I will pass it off to Mike.
So this is my second time to see this film. Like Justin, I've seen a handful of Wong Kar-wai films, some of which I like and some of which I do not like. Ashes of Time is a bad movie. I agree with that. I do like Chungking Express, Days of Being Wild, As Tears Go By. I liked all of those. I don't so much like My Blueberry Nights. But I also like this movie. So he's a mixed bag. I've never been absolutely crazy about any of his movies. I do like Chungking and this one the most. This one definitely being the one I have the most affection for. I think on Letterboxd right now I have it at 4.5 or 5 stars. This has been a movie that I've always remembered for all the reasons you guys have said. One of the things that always stuck with me since the decade plus since I've seen this movie the first time was the music. The slow motion shots of the alleyway and going down to get the noodles, and watching them pass by each other, and the blocking between them. The combination of the movement of the camera and the slow motion and the lighting and their blocking and her dress, everything about it is just beautiful and has always stood out as one of those moments in movies that it's all about. You know what I mean? That where everything's working together to elevate any one element of it to something greater. I was really anxious to go back and watch it again, and I feel pretty much the same way. I appreciated it just as much, if not more. I think this movie is really good. Like Justin was saying, the depth in almost every shot. There's so many frames within frames and reflections and filming people through doorways. All this stuff that makes this movie feel so voyeuristic, And I'll pretty much agree with everything you guys said along the way. To try to talk about something new, I would say that I think this movie, one thing I was thinking about more this time around, Hong Kong has been in the news recently because of all the political turmoil going on in Hong Kong currently. Right now we are in January 2020. As we record this, the past year that Hong Kong has been in the news has not been good or pleasant, No. And this movie takes place in Hong Kong during a time of a complicated political time, basically. The culture is very much shifting in this movie as well. And so a lot of this romance is painted very much by what they consider to be culturally appropriate at that time. So anyway, I'll just keep it there and just say that, this movie is really rich. I would say that it is definitely Wong Kar-wai's best film, one of the best looking movies in the Criterion Collection that we've reviewed so far in the show. I agree with Justin on that. Definitely. I think the performances are both exceptional. Mm-hmm. There's just something really bittersweet about this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just one of those that that stays with you, I guess. I've never forgotten it, and yeah, I will probably watch it again in the next 10 years, and I'm hoping I'll feel similarly.
Hopefully sooner than that, for me at least.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
It feels like a film that every time you revisit it, you pull something a little different from it, and part of that would be bringing your own experiences to the table and your own thoughts and feelings. But the film is so kind of enigmatic and less like story driven that I think you're doing so much filling in the gaps that you can add in like some of your own baggage in there, some of your own thoughts.
Sure.
I think the movie morphs over time.
Yeah, I think when we talked about Tokyo Story, we kind of talked about how you bring as much as the movie brings you closer to the movie and your own experiences. And I think the same thing happens during this film. And I thought about that as well during the film. I was just going to move on. I was kind of going to say I have a theory as to why this movie, you don't walk away from this movie like this is the masterpiece. And I think it has to do, at least for me, like as I walked away, I was like, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it looked great. I liked the story, but like there's something like I was removed from it. You know, I wasn't necessarily emotionally involved, and I was like doing some digging and reading around on the internet, and they talked about how this film is about unrequited love, and it's supposed to leave you unsatisfied, just like the lovers. Huh?
It's about what's not said.
Yeah, but I feel like that it leaves you feeling the same way, like wanting more or feeling like there wasn't enough in that relationship, or like, does that make sense? Like there's something missing, and same thing for the relationship. It just never went far enough or was ever satisfying for either party. And I think that includes us as the viewers. Like it's not completely satisfying. And I almost think that that's kind of beautiful in itself, that it makes you feel that way. How do you guys feel about that theory?
I mean, that makes sense to me. There's definitely something, unsatisfying in the sense that unlike another romance, we don't ever see them kiss.
Right.
We don't ever, and I don't know that they ever do.
Yeah.
They do spend the night together at one night, but we don't really know what happens.
Yeah. Every time we see them, I think she's in the bed and he's in the chair, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we don't see anything that implies directly that they ever cross those lines.
Yeah.
Well, but it being a romance movie, there is so much tension between the two that you do kind of want to see it, I think, or you have that expectation maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, it's the same. It's like a Lost in Translation kind of vibe. Spoilers for that movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's about, the want of it. Yeah, you want this tension to pay off, but it's not that kind of story. Right? And I mean, like, also, the way it's even filmed in this particular movie alone, it's filmed to where you're removed from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So many shots in this movie are filmed, are frames within frames, through hallways or doors or reflections or windows or whatever. The whole movie has this very voyeuristic kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely, because the depth that we talked about, there's a lot of like foreground elements in this film in a lot of the compositions, and those foreground elements, they kind of give you this sort of like feeling of peeking around something or looking through something and seeing something and being hidden from like the people, the subjects, where they can't see you. So I think you're right.
You know, one thing I think that stands out, at least from the films that I've seen of Wong Kar-wai, is a lot of his movies feel very melodramatic, very romantic, very just really, really melodramatic. And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Just kind of what they are. They're very romantic movies, like Tony Scott style 80s romance, you know? At least as far as like a lot of his earlier movies goes, and this movie, or at least Chungking Express, but I was going to say this movie feels a little different. This movie is probably the movie I find to be the most romantic of his. I think, unlike Chris, I think this romance, although you do feel a little is missing from it, I connected with it more than I think you did. But this is filmed in such a withholding way. I mean, this could be called a melodrama, I guess, but it doesn't feel like it.
All the melodrama feels removed.
Yeah, it feels like a melodrama with all those scenes removed completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that goes to what Chris is, pointing out, is that we never see the wife or the husband, right?
Never their faces anyway.
Yeah. And we do. It's like the back of a head, and we hear a voice from off screen. And I think the biggest melodrama would come from the reactions. Like the most melodrama we get, I think, is the scene where Maggie Cheung is rehearsing with Tony Leung, how she's going to ask him if he has a mistress, or if he's been cheating on her. That's kind of melodramatic, but then once we know it's a rehearsal, that scene kind of changes in tone.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's only melodramatic because it's filmed in such a way to where we can't see who she's actually talking to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
because it's filmed in such a voyeuristic way, like from the other room.
Yeah, well, that's one of those moments where that decision to not show the husband or wife who's cheating at all really pays off in this like tangible way, because you only see, blurry foreground of who she's talking to. And at least I initially, even this time, because it's been so long since I've seen it, I thought, we're going to see her side of like talking to him, but we're just going to see a piece of him and not actually see him and hear his voice. And it's only when it cuts to the reverse angle and you realize she's rehearsing with Tony Leung that like that scene has like one mood and is so like tense. And then it immediately it changes totally whenever we cut and see Tony Leung.
For sure.
At least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that same dynamic is actually explored the other way. They both impersonate one another's spouses, which I think is actually interesting because it seems like this is their way to sort of deal with it, because I don't get the impression that either of them are ever really going to confront their actual spouses. So this seems like their only way they're ever going to have these conversations at all. At least that's the vibe I get this time when watching it. Like, I get the vibe that, like, yeah, they may be broken up with these people at the end, but it's not because they called it off. It's because they were just left.
And how does that mesh for you guys with, like, their character in terms of they have this... I think they both have feelings for each other on some levels,
For sure.
Some of them have, like, stronger feelings than the other. But how does that mesh with their, like... They're like, okay, we're going to be friends, but we're not going to cross that line. We're not going to commit, like, the same wrong that they did. How does that connect, like, as a character with the idea that they wouldn't leave?
It feels like they are constantly setting up boundaries for themselves and then crossing those. Like, we can't be seen together, or, like when the gossiping starts to happen, and so they start doing something different. It feels like they are setting up those boundaries constantly and then crossing over them. So it's never shown to us that they cross the physical part of that boundary. So I'm not sure. I think there might be, like we see the kid at the end of the film. So that's a question as to whether they actually ever did cross that physical part of it. But I think, especially in an affair, that's how those things start off. You're like, I'm friends with this person. I like hanging out with this person. And I think that they see this as an affair. But then, so you're like, okay, well, I'll hang out with this person, but I won't let it go this far. Then, okay, well, I'll let it go that far, but I won't let it go this far, And so I think that that's how this is working, or at least that's how it feels to me.
See, to me, this seems more like a sham romance.
Like they're pretending?
Well, I think they both need it because they're avoiding confronting their own situations.
Well, there is that. I do think as well, yeah.
Let's put it this way. I think it was always doomed. I don't know that they were building anything meaningful, or if they were both just sort of building a mutual fantasy. But like, well, imagine if we were having a romance too, That would make this whole thing a little bit easier, but we're better than that. Like, they need that more than they actually need the romance, I think.
They need to be better?
They need to have the option to have it and then not want it. Because honestly, I don't think either of them are very romantic people. Because I think this time I was thinking, as I was watching it, I was thinking, maybe these two just aren't particularly good at affection and love, and that's why they're being cheated on. Not that that's an excuse, but I'm saying I think that that's something you're supposed to be thinking about, right? I think neither of them are particularly good at opening up. I don't think either of them are comfortable going to the next steps, even though morally they could, but they're putting these boundaries upon themselves, crossing them sometimes. But ultimately, I think whenever it starts getting too serious, they part ways because they know it's not really a real head over heels romance. It's more of like a way to avoid real life. I mean, this movie feels so like on cloud nine, right? Like, I think there's like, I don't know how many locations there are in the movie, but we repeat a lot of the same locations. We go back to the same alleyway. We go back to the same hallway, the same rooms. There's not that many people in the cast.
Yeah. Same shots, a lot of times
same
too.
Shots. Yeah. So it very much feels like they're in this weird bubble of a place that only they exist in only this time, I feel like it's more of a fantasy, and it was always doomed. Is I guess what I'm talking about. It was never real in the sense that it's like a, romance for the ages. They were never going to be together, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment that there is this feeling of, it's inevitably not going to work because there is convenience. I feel like, to your point, Mike, I think, do you ever you have that thing where talking to someone else about your problems is so much easier than talking to the person you have the problem with.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you can process all your emotions before you even see that person again.
Yeah. It's that's what people go to therapy and see counselors, and they can, have this sort of somewhat unbiased person to talk to. And I think that's where this relationship comes from.
It's very therapeutic for me.
That ability, that ability to have someone, and even in this case, it's wow, we're both going through the same thing. Our significant other, our spouse, is having an affair, and is it confirmed, or is it are they just suspicious that the affair is with the other person's, her husband is cheating with his wife?
I feel like it was confirmed in my mind, and now that you're throwing shade on it, I'm not sure. But I think that they both, my husband has a tie just like that one, and my wife has a bag just like that one. I feel like that confirms it. I guess it's not confirmed, but to me, there's enough evidence to conclude that they are.
Yeah, it just makes the whole attraction feel a little bit more, therapeutic, born out of the situation of we're going through the same thing, and this connection comes from that and the ability to be together and cope in some way, or attempt to cope.
Yeah, it is. It definitely starts off as coping. For me, it felt like it grew into something more. It was no longer about their spouses. Especially for Tony Long's character, I feel like he had genuine feelings that didn't have anything to do with his wife or the husband. I think it had to do. He enjoyed writing these serials with her. He enjoyed being around her.
I agree, but I also think it was never going to work because of who they are.
Right.
I don't think there was ever a situation where either of them made the move to make this a lasting relationship. I don't get that impression or that vibe.
Well, I feel like
I think this was even if they wanted it. At that time and place in their lives, I don't think that they were ready.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think they both make the move, but they never make it at the same time.
Yeah.
She goes to Singapore to go see him, but they miss each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gets her the ticket,
that's
to
why
go
I
to
meant
Singapore.
at that time in their lives, because they were both ready at different times.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is very much like real life.
Yeah. It reminds me of that scene in Boyhood with Ethan Hawke at the end of the movie. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, but you should explain, yeah.
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 Okay, well, spoilers, I guess, for the last 20 minutes of Boyhood. Skip ahead 60 seconds if you don't want to know. But basically, Ethan Hawke's character, he's a deadbeat dad the whole movie, right? But as the years go on, he starts to kind of whip into shape, and he marries again and has another kid or something, or two kids or something like that. And he eventually kind of straightens out and becomes a pretty... good father, right? A good role model and a good dude, and not at all the dude he was at the beginning of the movie. And as he's talking to his son at the end of the movie, he basically says, like, hey, I changed a lot, and the guy I am now is not the guy I was whenever you and your mom and I first got together. And if I was the guy I am now, that's probably something like what your mom wanted, right? And it probably would have worked out way differently, but the timing wasn't right. People are right for one another, but they just aren't in the same places in their lives yet. So it's just not going to work out. And this movie, the whole movie and the whole end of the movie kind of reminded me a lot of that scene in Boyhood.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can pull back to like, I kind of want to talk about some of that repetition stuff. Mike, you mentioned it with like the score. There's that same piece of music that repeats over and over again. We talked about some of the shots and compositions and locations, and we see the same setting and the same shot, but like different things are happening. But I guess like overall, for that repetition that is used throughout the film, like how does that work for you guys? Like what does that add to the story doing it that way, as opposed to having different locations and all different locations? You know what I mean?
I think it makes it feel part of this, like, yeah, it's in Hong Kong, but it almost feels like it feels like no one else exists in this world, because when they look back at their lives, that's probably all they remember of this time period, Yeah. They remember these days, these locations. These were the places they frequented. These were the places they fell in love, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
These are the places they remember. I also think it helps us track their relationship as the movie progresses, and how the blocking changes, within the scenes each time we go back to these locations,
That
how they respond to one another. What?
That and her dresses kind of help you track where you're at.
Yeah.
Like, this is a new day.
Her dresses are so fun to look at in this movie.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Everything's like the wallpaper, the like furniture. There's a lot of love for this time period.
Yeah.
Which I think we've said it's the 1960s.
Yeah.
There's a lot of love for everything that's going on, from like the type of furniture, the type of like the food and the streets and the buildings and stuff. Like you feel that. And I think that is where like the age that Wong Kar-wai grew up in. So he has a lot of like, he's building a lot of his memories and like, romanticizing of that time a bit.
You know what the time period really felt like to me, and it's not. I hope it's not taken as an insult, but like it felt like Dark City. You know how the time period in Dark City is like the 1950s, 1960s, and it doesn't.
It's like a film noir-esque.
Yeah, it feels hyper real. Like it feels like the 1960s, but it feels like there's a level of like unrealness. It could even be sci-fi. Does that make sense?
That's kind of what I was saying. It feels like they're on an island almost.
Yeah.
Like they're in Hong Kong, yeah, but it feels like they're nowhere.
Yeah, it feels timeless, maybe is the right word.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is just like when they remember this time, like at the end of the movie, it skips ahead a few years, but like when they look back at this time period, I feel like these are the only things they'll remember. The places they frequent. You know what I mean? Like when you look back at a place you moved away from, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when you think back on it, you look at all the places you visited with your friends a lot, the places you worked, but like you always have like 3 or 4 places that come to mind first about a certain place. You know what I mean? Like a certain area or town you've lived in. That's kind of what it reminded me of in this movie. It kind of reminded me of like, oh yeah, that was like that noodle alleyway where we used to go buy noodles and run into each other a lot. Yeah. Oh yeah, this was that crappy, cramped house in the hallway where we always like would, sometimes bump into each other or eavesdrop on one another or,
glance
that
at
kind
each
of
other.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of what it felt like to me. And I really appreciated that. It felt like even though they have a whole city as their places, they have the options to go, right? We compared this to like Lost in Translation earlier. They're trapped in a hotel, that movie. But this movie, they might as well be trapped in a hotel because they take every other setting off the table, basically, and make it feel like they're trapped in an area.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's interesting about this movie is not a flashback that we're experiencing, but it does feel like memory with some of the editing and the way that things are done. And I think it's one of the things that we've called out so far in this episode, but also just in talking to you guys at various times in our lives about Wong Kar-wai and his use of that, like his varying uses of slow-mo, where sometimes it's really smooth and pretty and sometimes it's very choppy and weird. And he does both in this movie. But I think this is one of the movies where that feels really coherent and cohesive with like with what the movie's doing and the tone of the movie, where it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I agreed.
Because there is a bit of like fractured memory going on. So when like the slow-mo is choppy, I don't know, it kind of meshes well. And
it's not, to me, his other movies that I've seen that use it, it's overused. There's too much of it. And this, it's kind of, it feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Mike, you were kind of talking about it. We have a listener question that I think we could answer, if you guys are ready for that.
Yeah,
I am.
All right, so this is from Twitter from Ian Bulaklock, and he asks, how does this movie compare to movies like Lost in Translation and Moonlight, since those two mentioned, they were influenced by this? So we've already talked about Lost in Translation a little bit, but we can elaborate if we want.
I did not know that Lost in Translation was inspired by this, but I mean, it's probably something you could have guessed.
It's hard not to think of Lost in Translation while watching this movie.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like the same way it's hard not to think about 2001: A Space Odyssey when you're watching Interstellar.
Right. Yes, exactly. Or Breathless when you're watching Breathless with Richard Gere.
Right. Totes.
But yeah, you touched on like the sort of, I think the biggest thing for me is like the tension of how to pull off this like sexual tension and this sort of romance, and then not pay it off or not have them get together, or have us kind of like know and have this feeling that like they're not going to get together at the end of the movie, and like pull that off successfully is one of the big things that I see as like similarities.
Yeah. The unrequited part of that love.
That, and like it's all about the touching. When two characters don't ever kiss or are never romantic, but you know they want to be, much like the both sets of characters in both of these films, Lost in Translation and this one, not Moonlight. Both of them, there's a lot of tension between like what's not said and every touch. So like every hand gesture, every time someone stands next to someone in a hallway or moves close to someone, those movements mean so much more. So if you can tap into that, the audience like paying attention to that stuff and really like being invested in the tension between them, then I think you can make a love story like this work. But if the audience isn't invested in that tension and they're just bored by it, then I think it will fall flat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I also think some of those same things could be said for Moonlight, particularly the third act or third chapter of Moonlight.
Yeah.
Where the main character is an adult and he goes to the diner to visit, the guy that he had kissed on the beach. And that whole scene, it has that tension to me. And at a certain point, I think the guy who works in the diner talks about having a kid and like shows him pictures of his kid or something like that. Mm-hmm. And at that point, you kind of know this relationship, they're not going to like have this happy get back together and like go off to like back to his place and, do anything.
Right.
So they both have that sort of moment of watching a doomed relationship or watching these characters who have feelings for each other and it's very clear, but they're not going to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Which that's like my favorite section of Moonlight. That's when the film really won me over.
Yeah, I was won over with Mahershala Ali in the first part.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't want to disparage the other parts of the movie because those are all really good. No,
you already said you hated Mahershala
You hate
Ali
the movie. That we get it, Justin.
Yeah, sorry. You found me out. The Moonlight also very, very colorful in a similar way, I think. Where like, the colors really, really pop or they have a certain like saturation level to it. They're probably more saturated in Moonlight. And in The Mood for Love, it's kind of warm and soft to look at, as opposed to Moonlight is a bit of like a punch in the face with some of its color and its contrast and its sharpness. Any other thoughts on those two movies in relation to In the Mood for Love?
No. I recommend them both. If you like one and you haven't seen the other, watch one.
Watch all three for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. And another Twitter question, and we've touched on this a
Two
little
Twitter
bit.
questions?
Two Twitter questions.
Now
Incredible.
there are two of them? This is getting out of hand.
What does that mean?
Mine was a prequel memes reference.
Oh, I didn't get it.
Now there are two of them? Phantom Menace?
Nope.
Okay.
But I appreciate anytime you work a Phantom Menace quote into a conversation.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But anyway, so this question comes from Jacob Neff on Twitter. And he says, how on God's green earth can one film be so packed with one mind-blowing shot after another? The first time I watched In the Mood for Love, my jaw was constantly on the floor at the insane artistry on display. And
I get that.
yeah, we've talked about it, but I think we can take a moment to gush about it here because I'm in complete agreeance with him. And, as you and I both said, Mike, the last time we watched this film was over 10 years ago. And in between the last time I watched it and this time, I went to film school as an undergrad and a grad and have shot a ton of video and, shot short films and feature film. And
You've lived.
I've lived and I've understood.
That's what I was saying earlier, but I didn't put it very eloquently.
Yeah. I've learned about composition and what makes a shot good and depth and all of this stuff, to pay attention to those things more. And this movie
maybe
is
even
just
experienced a little bit more heartbreak. Who knows?
Yeah, that too. From a purely cinematography standpoint, I know a lot more and pay attention to a lot more than I ever used to. And this movie is distractingly good looking at times. Where sometimes I forgot to read subtitles of what they were saying.
Yeah.
It's like watching a painting or several paintings.
Yeah, for some reason that really stuck out with me the first time I watched it because that's kind of what made me fall in love with this movie. But I'm glad that you got on board this time. I'm glad you noticed it because I've always remembered the slow motion shots of the alleyway. That's probably been the stuff that just never left me. It's her carrying the noodle can up and down the stairs.
Well, so at work, when we've built some visual inspiration boards for different projects or different types of shooting that we're doing, I have pulled up In the Mood for Love because I did remember some of these compositions being similar to the things that we looks we wanted to achieve. And so I've always remembered that it is this good looking movie, but this is my first time to sit down and just watch it front to back and just see how many shots are like that. You know what I mean? I was pulling stills from Google and just seeing shots here and there. And I was yeah, look at these good shots in this movie. And I didn't remember that this whole thing start to finish, every shot's as good as the last, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially considering they're filming in such small spaces a lot of the times, that's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. That apartment they live in.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to make that thing look interesting, I would imagine. The whole time, it doesn't look like by the end of the movie we've seen every inch of that place and we're bored of it.
Yeah, no, not at all. And even though we are seeing the same thing over and over again in some cases,
that's what I mean. It's always creative, filming from different rooms or filming in reflections or
from down the hallway.
Yeah,
where the walls of the hallway closest to camera are getting really blurry and out of focus and creating depth that way. And I think there's a whole have you guys ever watched the Every Frame a Painting?
Yeah, a few of them.
He has a video on In the Mood for Love, I believe, that's a really interesting study of just the frames within frames used within that film and stuff. And I just overall this film is kind of a masterclass in composition, and it would be something if I were to teach film or something early on, I would be showing film students In the Mood for Love.
It makes sense. Yeah.
I think one final thing that I have is I just want to talk a little bit about the ending of the movie where they go to where is
Singapore?
It? It's the Angkor Wat.
Oh, okay.
Is it Singapore?
Cambodia.
Is that as literal as I take it, that he tells the story earlier in the film about how people would whisper their secrets into a tree hole and cover it up with mud. And so obviously he's doing that here, but is it as like on the nose metaphorically that he's like in a bunch of ruins after like this like relationship didn't work out and his other marriage didn't work out. So like he's just amongst a bunch of ruins and that's his life. Is that too pessimistic? I don't know.
Maybe. I think it might just be as simple as like, this is a good location for a movie shot to signal where he's at, like in a different country. But I mean, who knows? That's probably too simplistic. You may be right, but
yeah, I like that answer less, but go on.
Yeah. That's it. I'm done with that thought.
Okay. I was like, when the movie ended and I was like, oh, wow, that's like our final imagery of the movie is like, it's not just him whispering into it. It's like shots of the ruins and stuff. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's all about the past, man. All it is now is memories.
Seeing fractured pieces and stuff.
Yeah, can't ever get it back. It'll never be. But you can still think about it and carry it with you.
Yeah, or whisper it and bury it into a hole.
Yeah, there you go.
Do what you want. Have you guys ever seen 2046?
I have not.
No, but I was actually looking at an interview with Wong Kar-wai, and he said that a lot of this movie's identity and that movie's identity are kind of like mixed together because they were filmed at the same time in this, or something like that. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask if either of you guys have seen it, because yeah, I saw that too. He talks about in some of the interviews that are on the Criterion edition, and yeah, I was curious if you guys had seen it and if you felt, you know,
how this movie
compared.
Plus Faye Wong again.
Yeah, and this movie's part of a trilogy, or according to Wikipedia, take that for what you will. It was the second part of a trilogy, with Days of Being Wild was the first and 2046 being the second. But he's got a movie coming out this year called Blossoms. It's supposed to be a fourth part.
Yeah.
Ooh. I've actually seen Days of Being Wild.
Yeah?
I like it.
I think they're a bit more informal and theoretical trilogies than like direct, like these are the same characters. But,
thematic trilogies.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Are they the same actors? I don't know.
I'm looking at 2046. It has Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung in it.
That
and
was
it also
definitely
has
the
Faye
same.
Wong
I remember
from
that.
Chunking.
So does Days of Being Wild, has them two in it, those two in it. Interesting. It makes me want to watch all those other movies more.
Yeah.
Even though I've heard good things, but that none of them are as highly acclaimed as In the Mood for Love.
Yeah, it's my favorite still, but I definitely recommend it.
Well, any final thoughts anybody has on In the Mood for Love?
I don't think so.
No.
I was...
Did you have a joke that you were going to try to say there?
No, I just realized that we still have to do our picks.
Oh my, we do.
So that's true. We got to pick our choices for our next Criterion poll. So, Mike, what is the theme of our Criterion poll this week?
All right. Our theme is going to be Oscar winners. So we each choose an Oscar winner of some sort within the Criterion collection, explain what it won and when, and why we chose it. And then we'll put it on social media and let you guys vote.
Great. Can I go last? Because I have two choices, and which one I pick depends on what you guys pick.
Oh, dear. I was going to do the same thing, but yes, you can go last because...
I called it first.
I'll go first.
That's
and
how it
that
works.
way, because I only have one. So if I go first,
Great.
then...
You don't
Great.
pick
I
another
love
one.
it.
Yeah. All right. So my pick is a film I've already seen that I really love. It's advertising a duo that's just as big as Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro in the history of film, and that is... It's John Wayne and John Ford in Stagecoach, which was nominated for a bunch of awards, but actually won for Best Supporting Actor and Best Original Music. It was also nominated for Best Picture back in 1940 and Best Director. Also cinematography and editing. So it ran the board on that one, but it only won the Best Supporting Actor and Music. But this is a movie I really, really like. And I've been wanting to watch a Western for a while. So for those of you listening, go out and vote for this one, okay?
Yeah, that's an important one. And one I haven't seen in a long time since the first time I watched it. So I'd be happy to revisit it.
Nice. Yeah, same here. I remember liking it quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to choose the 1960 film Spartacus.
Oh, nice.
Directed by Stanley Kubrick. This is the only, I think, feature-length Stanley Kubrick film I have not seen. So yeah, this won 4 Academy Awards in 1961. It was nominated for 6. It won Best Supporting Actor, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, and Best Production Design. It was nominated for Best Original Score and Best Film Editing.
Wow.
So, yeah, Kirk Douglas, Stanley Kubrick. I have been dying to watch this movie, but, yeah, here's my chance. Don't let me down, voters.
Yeah. So on to my choice, and you guys have helped me, decide between my two because you guys have picked such like strong classic films that I have to also pick a strong classic film to make this competition interesting and to make this choice difficult on the people. And that film is 1954's On the Waterfront from Elia Kazan.
Yeah.
On the Waterfront won 8 Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Marlon Brando, Best Screenplay. Also won Best Supporting Actress, Best Art Direction, Best Black and White Cinematography, and Best Film Editing.
Wait, did they have a separate category at one point? They have a black and white cinematography and a colored? Were they giving out 2 cinematography?
That's what it looks like. Also, art direction, on what I'm looking at, also states that it's for black and white specifically too.
Huh.
So they must have been doing that. I don't have the time to look it up right now, but
that's pretty awesome.
If it wins, well, I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But it also had 3 Best Supporting Actor nominations.
You
from
might
one
say
film.
This movie was a contender.
Yeah. If I was going to go with my other choice, I was going to say that this was going to be my original choice and say it could have been a contender.
Yeah. I'm glad we still got to throw contender in there somewhere.
Yeah. I appreciate it. But yeah, so again, it was nominated but didn't win 3 Best Supporting Actors and then also Best Score. Yeah, Carl Malden, Lee J. Cobb, and Rod Steiger all nominated.
Okay.
For Best Supporting Actor. So a lot of awards, recognition on this film. And it's a classic. People have heard of it, I'm sure. That's my choice. So to recap, the 3 choices are Stagecoach from John Ford. That's Chris's choice. Mike's is Spartacus from Stanley Kubrick. And my choice is On the Waterfront from Elia Kazan. So by the time you're listening to this, that will be up on Twitter, the poll. So you can go vote for it. The link will be in the show notes.
Usually I have a pretty good idea of what might win, but this time I have no idea.
Yeah, that's why I had to pick a strong one. Like my other choice was something that would have just got blown out of the water.
What was it?
The recently released documentary on Muhammad Ali, When We Were Kings. That's supposed to be really, really good. I was just trying to go something different. We haven't done a documentary yet.
Yeah, good call.
And it's on HBO now, I think, so it's pretty easy to watch. HBO Now, HBO Go, whichever one you have. It doesn't matter. They're the same movies.
I thought you just meant HBO, like currently.
I should have left it at that, shouldn't I?
Anyways.
But anyways, I'll save that one for another time when we'll choose like documentaries since we haven't done one.
Yeah, we have never done that, yeah.
Yeah, we should choose documentaries at some point. But anyway, let's end the show.
Sure. Well, thank you, guys,
You're
for talking
welcome.
to me about the movie. And thank you, listeners, for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel. Next week, we will be doing our top 10 films of 2019. Just before the Academy Awards, getting it in under the gun.
That's right. We'll each be counting down our top 10. So there's a potential we'll talk about 30 different films next week. If you want to send us your top 10s, or if you want to vote in our Criterion poll, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also send your top 10s, your questions to casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
See you later.